Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first experience here, you may want to check out some of my other videos just in case this may not be your cup of tea. For those who are my subscribers and like, where was your video today? Anyone who's been following my channel for any sort of length of time knows that I live in a difficult circumstance and situation, and I also have a full-time job. I work in the medical arena, and I finally got a break, I guess you could say. And last night in particular, when I got home, I was just like, I just need a night of rest. I cannot bring myself to go up and record and do all that stuff. And there are still a few readings and everything that I'm going to be doing, but I still need to do a strong cleansing after that reading from Monday. And I want to fulfill a request that I had, not last night, but the night before, from a viewer who had asked me to take you guys through kind of like a tour of my decks and point out which ones are my favorites. Now keep in mind, I have an extensive array of decks. Just because something is my favorite doesn't mean it's going to be your favorite. Just because I may resonate with something doesn't mean that you will. Just because I have a large amount of decks does not mean you have to go out and buy a lot of decks. Okay, for the most part, you guys see me use a few decks in each reading, but it depends on what I feel drawn to use in the moment. The one tried and true that I use all the time in every video just about is this deck. This is the Psychic Tarot. This deck in particular is a cross between an oracle deck and a tarot deck. It is not a traditional tarot deck. Again, anyone who's been following my channel for any length of time knows that I cannot presently, although that is something I'm working on, read traditional tarot decks. And actually, I have a few tarot decks that I've been working on and trying to develop my ability to read them, but even the tarot decks that I have, by and large, are not traditional tarot decks. I'm a weirdo. I struggle reading traditional tarot decks. So it's taken me a long time to find decks that I resonate with. So by and large, I use this deck when I do readings for the most part, and a lot of oracle decks to garner additional information. This deck, and forgive the status of this box, when my dog was a puppy, she somehow got a hold of this deck, the box, and decided to make it her personal chew toy. But this deck is the Psychic Tarot by John Holland. So when it comes to the decks that I read with and I get the main information with, this is one of them. And I have to say this one is generally my favorite, which you can see me using all the time. I do have another deck that I have used in the past, but lately I don't know if it's because my intuition has expanded or maybe I've outgrown it. That's also a possibility. But I also have this deck called the Energy Oracle Cards, which is also kind of like a cross between a tarot deck and a oracle deck. And I do sometimes use this. It's just lately I haven't been resonating with it, so I haven't been. But this is especially another deck if you're trying to get into reading cards and things of that nature, and you don't want to buy a ton of decks, and you're looking for something to help kind of be something between an oracle deck and a tarot deck. These are two decks that I recommend. This one happens to be my personal favorite, but the Energy Oracle is also a very good deck as well. So now we go into other decks, which I do have a lot of them. So let me pull them out, kind of, sort of, slowly. Some of them you will have seen me use on my channel. Others you won't have yet. Mainly because some of them, when you get cards, when you get different decks, sometimes it takes a while for your energy to sync up with the energy of the cards. And you have to kind of take time to get to know them and for them to get to know you. Other decks I have been able to use right away when I get them fresh out of the box. But some of them take a little bit longer, and you know what? That's okay. There's no rush. I'm just pulling out the ones that I have next to me, mainly because I'll do these first and then I will put them to the side and pull out more. Now, with regards to other forms of decks that are non-traditional in form, for kind of like a tarot deck, but also not at the same time. If you wanted to read cards, but you have struggled with tarot decks, like I do sometimes, I highly recommend the Lenormand decks. And these are two that I believe that I've used on my channel before. If not, I have definitely used them personally off camera. And it just depends on the kind of artwork that you're drawn to at the time. This is the Celtic Lenormand. I love this deck. It's easy for me to handle. The imagery is just, it's stunning. And it can really help you understand the information that you are getting. So this is the Celtic Lenormand deck. This is probably the first non-traditional, non-oracle deck that I bought. And this one is the Gilded Reverie Lenormand. This is one that I more recently obtained. I tend to pick out cards based off their artwork, because unless I resonate with the artwork, I'm not going to necessarily want to use them. So this is the Gilded Reverie Lenormand. This is also one that's kind of like between an oracle deck and a tarot deck, but this is very non-traditional. So you're not going to have the four suits. You're not going to have the, you know, cups and pentacles and the individual number things. these do not have 78 cards or however many cards are in a traditional tarot, but they give you enough information. Like these decks do have cards that symbolize things like, let me see if I can find, I think this is Universe card. I believe this is the Tower card. So it does have a number of different symbols and meanings. And if you're looking for a deck that is not a tarot deck, and if you struggle reading those, you may want to try picking up a Lenormand deck. Whichever one that draws you, there are a number of them. These are just two. So, let's see. When it comes to healing decks, I have 3. The 2 that I tend to not necessarily show preferential treatment to, but the 2 that draw me the most often is this deck, which is the Herbal Healing Oracle deck. And its box is over to the side, and it's buried under a number of things, so forgive me, I'm not going to pull that one out. And this one in particular, that was a recent purchase, called the Heal Yourself Reading Cards. They have 2 different energy wavelengths, and I've always been drawn to herbs and nature, but I love the artistry of these cards and that it assigned a specific herb and the meaning of it. I do have another deck that's similar to this that I also do like. It's just that I don't use it very often on my channel, though I have. Sorry, I'm just moving things around so I can unearth things. And that is the Magical Herb Oracle. So those are my 3 healing decks, by and large. And this is another one that is similar to the Herbal Healing deck. It just has different artistry and artwork to it. It is beautiful. So, and it also is less sticky than this one. So I may start using this one again whenever I'm drawn to pull healing cards on my channel. This deck, I love the images and everything on it, but it has a finish on it that makes it very hard to shuffle, because the finish is very tacky for some, I think because it's so shiny. So that's one thing to keep in consideration if you're looking for decks that are easy to shuffle. This one is as well. Okay, let me go back to the decks I had next to me so I can specifically put those back first. Here we have a deck I have not used on my channel yet. It's called the Postcards from Spirit. This is one that I'm taking time to energetically get in tune with. So this is one that I can't give you an honest review of yet, but it is one that I have and hope to use sometime in the future. I like this Dragon Oracle cards. They tend to only want to come out at specific times though, when there's specific messages that need to be relayed. It's not a traditional oracle deck, so here, for an example, we have the Earth Dragon. Clears your path and land around you. Stay grounded, be ready to serve. stuck energy is clearing. You can move forward in life. This is more of a deck that I would use when I feel that someone has dragon energy around them. And may have some dragon guardians that want to speak. Which hasn't happened in a while. I have the past life oracle cards, which you will have seen, and I'll put it somewhere up here. Doreen Virtue. This is the deck that I used when I was doing the career change pick a card, because it has all of these beautiful cards with regards to different kinds of careers and different kinds of paths that you can take. Not all of them on, understandably, but I haven't really delved into this deck beyond using that for that specific purpose, so I can't really give a review of how you would use this normally right now. Again, that's something that may change in the future. We have the How Now cards by Raphael Kushner. This is a deck I don't believe I've used on my channel yet. I might have. And it has different imagery and different meanings. These tend to be better that if you were in need of personal guidance. I would recommend buying this deck to do, like, in the morning, pick out a card that you feel drawn to and then read the meaning of that card and its message for you. This is what the box looks like. So that's why you haven't really seen that one on my channel. Ask and it is given. I have used this before on my deck, on my channel. It's from Tester. Let's try that again. Esther and Jerry Hicks. Wow. I'm getting tongue-tied again. I have used this deck on my channel. The reason why I don't use it often is because you can see all the images are different and there's no real way to block me from seeing what the message of the card is. I used it once, and in order to get a completely unbiased pull, I shuffled it with my eyes closed. And I pulled the card with my eyes closed. So that's another reason why I don't use it often, but I do like it. And this is another deck that I recommend that if you feel like you need guidance in the morning, it's definitely one I would recommend for that purpose, where you would pull it out and pick a card for the day. So I did these three. Let me put these two back. Okay. I have these. Actually, I have 3 Goddess Oracle decks. But they have different energy wavelengths. I'm sure you're like, what does that even mean? So, let me actually sip on some water real quick. Of these 3 decks, the one that you will have seen the most, if you have been following my channel for any length of time, is this deck. This is the deck that somebody made the comment one day that it has 666s on the back of it. It does not. That is a Celtic symbol of the Triskel. It is a protective symbol. But This deck I particularly use to help me channel into the motivations of people. Sometimes when I'm doing readings, you will have likely seen it come out a lot when I do the readings on human trafficking, Epstein, all of that kind of stuff, because its energy wavelength is of a darker nature. Now, that's not to say that it's bad in any way, make, shape, or form, but when you're dealing with a more serious subject that goes into harsher subjects, the energy wavelength of the deck can matter. Like, these two tend to be pretty light. Although if I were to identify these, I would say this is the lightest. So if you're looking for happy messages, this is more your deck. I would say this is middle of the ground because it has both positive and ones that are maybe not so positive. And the Dark Goddess tends to be for the more serious subjects. So this one I might use when somebody might need a little boot in the butt, but in a loving way kind of thing. This one I tend to gravitate to when I feel that someone doesn't really need their butt kicked today. Let me give them a message to help them become uplifted in some sort of way. So those are those three. I'm trying not to mix up my decks too much because I keep certain ones on top for a reason, because I grab them most. This is my Romance Angels deck. If you have followed any sort of channels with regards to doing love readings in any way, this is the deck that pretty much all of us use. It's from Doreen Virtue. I bought this deck in Ireland when I was there a couple years ago. It happened to be one of those things that in Ireland they don't call them pagan stores necessarily. They tend to call them angel stores. Most likely because Ireland is tends to be a very devout country, so I'm sure they don't want to freak out the locals who may not take the time to educate themselves and inform themselves. So I went to an angel store over there, and this is one of the purchases that I made. And it is a tried and true deck when you're looking into any sort of love situation, because it's a very balanced deck. It has both the very positive messages and also the messages of, girl, he or she is not the one type of energy. So this is definitely a deck that I recommend if you are looking into romantic type situations. The reason why I'm going into the energy and everything of different decks as well is because picking out decks is a very selective process. And only you know what decks you want and why you want them. So I'm specifying not only their energy, but what I personally use them for that reason. This next deck is one that is absolutely beautiful, and I'm learning to read, because anyone who has been on my channel for any length of time, one thing I haven't really spoken about is astrology. I'm actually trying to learn the astrological houses and all of that kind of stuff. That is not something that I know off the top of my head. So I'm trying to learn that. It's something I had delved into some years ago, but then I never continued with it. And of course, you don't use it, you lose it type of thing. So this is a deck called the Black Moon Astrology Cards by Susan Shepard. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, look at this artwork. I think I've used it maybe once or twice on my channel, and I think it was most likely I used it for a personal reading because the deck just kind of drew me, and then I spent a fair amount of time looking up the meanings of the cards and everything for them and reading that information off as well. But yes, if you are into astrology, if you are really curious about that, this is a deck I would recommend. Not just for its artwork, but because it is, I found it when I used it, it was very user-friendly. Let me do the other decks that I had over to the side so that I can put them back. These decks are new to me. I have not used them yet. These are decks that I get the sense I need to use them a bit off camera so that we can get friendly with one another. Called Soul's Journey Lesson Cards by James Van Praagh, who is a very well-known intuitive medium. I believe it was his story that was used to some degree, or his life experience to some degree, that was used on the show The Ghost Whisperer. If you have not seen that, I believe her name was Jennifer Love Hewitt is the actress. He was a director or in some way involved with the show because he wanted the show to be as accurate and true to form with regards to that discussion of what are mediums, what do mediums do kind of thing. So he is a very well-known intuitive, although he hasn't been as popular in recent years with mediumship abilities. So I need to get friendly with the deck before I use it on camera, which is why you haven't seen it yet. It might be one that you may feel is a good deck, again, if you need to pick a card in the morning or something. This next deck is called the Keepers of the Light Oracle. This is one that I think I have used before. Yes, I did. The reading that I used with this deck in particular was in no way, make, shape, or form affiliated with the meanings of these cards. It was when I did the Carmageddon reading, and I used one card representing Jeffrey, one to represent Shane Dawson, one to represent Tati Westbrook, and another to represent James Charles. Because the artistry of these is absolutely beautiful. And this is one that I'm taking time to become energetically connected with before I use it on my channel, which is the only reason why you haven't seen it yet. But you may soon, because I'm starting to feel pretty connected to it. I may use it for a pick a card or something. This is not the only deck that Lily Moses did artwork for. I believe there's another deck by Kyle Gray that she did artwork for, and I mean, her artistry is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Okay. Let's pull out the... When I said I have a lot of decks, I meant I have a lot of freaking decks. Here's the book that goes along with that healing herbal deck. If you want to get a healing deck that is worth the bang of your buck, this comes in a beautiful box. This booklet is absolutely stunning and well organized. If you want a healing deck, I love this deck. But again, personal preferences. And I think that deck was like $20-something. I can't quote the exact price because I've bought so many decks that I don't even remember anymore. Okay, if you noticed a jump cut, it's because I got interrupted, and because I used my phone to record, the moment I got a phone call, it screwed up my recording. So I'm starting this portion over again. I'm going to try to make the rest of this faster because I see how long it's taking. So this is a deck that's beautiful. Absolutely recommend it. I just struggle shuffling it because the deck is rather large. So if you don't have small hands like I do, its energy is very ethereal and otherworldly. So if you're looking for information like on Lemuria, that is definitely a good deck for that. This is another deck that I have to learn how to use, and I have to connect with it. It's called Karma Cards. This is also one that involves the astrology side of things, so it includes the planets, signs, house cards, all of that. So that's why you haven't seen this one on my channel yet. But it's one that as I learn things, I hope to use. Magical Spell Cards is also a unique deck that I hope to use on my channel. It's by Lucy Cavendish. When it comes to card authors, I love Lucy Cavendish. I love her decks. She has very unique decks. But this is one I will get into at some point. Let's see. On the subject of Lucy Cavendish, I have 2 other decks of hers. I can unearth the other one. There we go. Pulling out all the decks now. Let me put this one to the side because I talked about this one already. I have the Blessed Bee deck, and I have the Fairy Blessings deck by her. These are also rather unique. You can sort of use them in a sort of tarot way, but overall they generally are oracle decks. I love her artwork. I love the energy of them, and they're ones that I frequently will use. I use this one in an actual dedicated fairy blessing pick a card. I may do another one of those at some point. Let me move things to the side that I already spoke about so that they're not in the way. Let's see. So many decks and so little places to put them. Hey, this is a perfect opportunity to start organizing things a little bit better, right? There's the other one. Let me put all the Lucy Cavendish ones together. Yay! Okay, so decks you've seen versus decks you haven't. Especially if you haven't been following my channel for very long. A lot of these decks you will not have seen, but some of them I have used on camera. This is a newer deck that I've only used a couple times for private readings. It's a Rumi Oracle deck, an invitation to the heart of the divine. This is another one that's really good also for love and divine union messages. So if maybe you don't resonate with Doreen Virtue, especially because she can be considered a little bit problematic, this might be an alternative for you. The artwork is very different though, so it may take a little bit more effort to learn their meanings and messages, so keep that in mind. Another deck that I have used on my channel that you will not have seen in a while is the Gaia Oracle deck. This is one of the very first Oracle decks that I started out with. Beautiful, beautiful artistry, beautiful messages. It doesn't just give positive, happy, fluffy stuff. It also gives the underbelly side of things. I don't like to say dark because I don't want you to attribute dark with bad, because it's not, you know, dark does not equal bad, but maybe I'll use the term shadow, the shadow side of life as well. Another good deck for that is also another deck that I started out with, also by Lucy Cavendish, called the Oracle of the Dragon Fae. This is actually the very first Lucy Cavendish deck that I had, and apparently I mixed up backs. I was wondering why that did not match up. Oh goodness, I had the Gaia Oracle back with the Lord. Okay, so this is Gaia Oracle. These are some of the cards. Like I said, it does not just light side of things, but some of the deeper meanings as well. And this is the Oracle of the Dragon Fae, which also does both lighter and shadowy side of things. And that is some of the artwork that belongs to that. I have no idea how I did that. I tend to be pretty careful when it comes to putting my decks away, but apparently at some point, the last time I used them, I got all screwed up in the head. Another deck that I haven't pulled out in a while, it's not a normal deck by any means, but I really love the art, and it tends to be a lighter deck, is the Universal Wisdom Oracle cards. This is a really good deck if you're looking for intuitive guidance as well. Generally they all are, but they all are in different ways. And that's partially why I have so many freaking decks, because you never know what messages you're going to be intuited to grab. This is another Doreen Virtue deck called the Indigo Angel. This is also one of my very first decks, and this is the inside. Has beautiful artwork. It's, even though it's a shiny surface, it's very easy to shuffle, and it has different kinds of art and meanings. This tends to be a deck that I gravitate to when I really am picking up on a person's angel guide guides, angelic guides, because this tends to be a very upper realm kind of deck. At least from my experience. Not everybody's experience is going to be the same. Next is Raven's Wand Oracle by Stephen Hutton. This deck I use a lot of the time when delving into ancestral things. This is the first ancestral type of deck that I got. It's a beautiful deck. Also one that can be a little bit hard for me to shuffle because it's so tall. But if that's not a problem for you, this is a stunning deck. Very, very user-friendly, very easy to shuffle. It may just take some time to read the book as to what the cards mean, because the meanings on the cards aren't necessarily 100% with what the cards mean. I tend to gravitate a lot towards decks that I can easily discern the meaning of the deck or the card from the appearance and from any text that's on it. That one tends to take me longer to use because I tend to have to look things up more. This is another deck that I think I've used a little bit when I've talked about different forms of divination. It is one that I use when I talk about divination because it gives you a card to kind of coincide with the different forms. So, haven't really used it a lot, but I have used it, so. Oh my goodness. Going through all of these is like, wow. Alright, so Whispering Woods is just little messages, and there's a number of different decks like this. I love these for when I just want a quick message. Kuan Yin is very maternal energy. This is by Alana Fairchild. I love the artwork. I have two decks that are centered around the moon. I have the moon deck and I have Moonology. Both of them I love, but for different reasons. This one tends to be more guided messages. This tends to focus in on, how do I put this? Timing kind of aspects or outcome, whereas this can actually give messages such as you need to focus on XYZ in your life to see improvement in different areas. And then I have the Trust Your Vibes, which I've also used on my channel. It tends to stick more, which is why I don't use them as often, but it is a very helpful deck. It's just one of those that I need to probably douse in flour and let it become less sticky, because especially when it's on humid days and things of that nature, it can be a little bit difficult to shuffle. Let's see. Kuan Yin. Alright, the money decks. I have Manifest Prosperity and Success, and I have Angels in Abundance, both of which I use and I enjoy using. I put Love one to the side because I talked about that already. I spoke about this one already. I don't want it to become buried. This is a new deck that I'm just starting to use, so until I use it more, I can't really go into recommendation or not. When people want life purpose guidance, this is the deck I use. With regards to shadow energies, use 1, 2, 3. Sometimes this one. I'm using that one lately. This is a brand new one I haven't used quite yet. The 3 in this grouping that kind of sort of go together are the Angelarium, the Dark Mirror Oracle, and the Mausolea Oracle. They are all from the same company. They all have that more shadow side of things. So when you're trying to discern the less positive side of things, these are very helpful. I have both the Shadow and the Lumen Threads of Fate decks. I also have their tarot deck, which is the one that I gravitate most to trying to learn tarot. So that's the one I've been working with. Shadow I use when I'm, again, delving into more shadow side of things. Lumen I tend to use when a lighter energy is appropriate, I should say. I was going to say required, but it's never required, but often appropriate. Divine Animals Oracle. It's beautiful artwork when it comes to if a person has more animalistic guides attached to them. I generally use this. It can be a more shadow side, but generally it's more someone who is more nature in energy, so neutral energy. This is one that you can kind of use as a tarot. This is the Wisdom of Avalon Oracle cards. Or I should say in between deck. This is my favorite deck when delving into angels and ancestors in particular. This is another Kyle Gray deck, and I love how beautiful the artwork is. Again, this is by Lily Moses, and I love the diversity of it. Messenger Oracle, there's some of the artwork. These I generally use dependent on the type of reading I just sense somebody needs. It's really, that's what it depends on. Wisdom of Hidden Realms. I love Colette Baron Reed. I love the Sacred Traveler deck if I'm sensing somebody has a lot of traveling to do or things of that nature. I tend to use that deck a lot. With this being 2020 hell that we all know, obviously that hasn't been happening much. So I'm just giving you a general overview. This is another Lucy Cavendish deck called the Oracle of the Hidden Worlds. This one is also very, very unique. Goes into Lemurian, Camelot, light temples. It tends to be a very upper realm deck to use. Just putting things to the side. Almost done. Promise. I know this is so long. Most people are gonna watch this and be like, I don't care. But crystals. Do I have a third deck? I know I have these two anyway. This one I got in a Goddess Provisions box, which I used recently on my channel. I love this one with the crystal spirits. This is also by Colette Baron Reed. That Species by the Thousands Crystal Oracle deck. Let me show you the back. I don't know where you would buy it. Actually, it says speciesbythethousands.com. So, if this is a deck that you may be interested in that may not be as expensive or, although I don't know the price, because again, I got it in a box. But it may not be as expensive as the Crystal Spirits, and it may just be more straightforward than that deck. Because that deck has a lot of different meanings depending on the reason why you're pulling the cards. so it's more simple in form. And then we have the Magic of You, Messenger Oracle, both of which tend to be guided messages. Use them as I feel drawn to do so. And the last deck that has a more interesting purpose lately is the Stacey DeMarco, the Halloween Oracle. I got this deck specifically because we're coming up on Samhain, and I wanted a deck that was reflective of those energies with the thinning veil. I also have a couple other decks of this nature, I believe, that are coming. But with regards to decks that I recommend, again, it's all so subjective. It depends on the purpose that you're going into them for. I also have this deck, which was very hard to find, Angel Answers Oracle deck. This can give you timing on things. It's the one that I use for reconsider yes and no when I channel spiritual energies or spirits to get information. So anyway, I'm sorry if this particular video may not have been as interesting to you. If you would like me to, at some point, maybe going forward, do like an after the reading where I go through what decks I used in the reading and why, let me know in the comments down below, and I will try to be mindful to do that going forward. That way you don't have to sit through another lengthy video like this, especially if I get new cards in the future. But yeah, these are all the decks that I have and either use presently or will use in the future as of right now. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too boring for you. And until next time, I wish you the brightest of blessings and blessed be.